Very dependent on the media outlet that one chooses to read, whether you think this was a Spotify split or a Sussex slump. Sussex slump is oddly difficult to say. Let's get into the news that broke late this week that Meghan and Harry and Spotify have agreed to mutually part ways. We'll talk about the broad strokes of this deal, but really what we are going to focus on is how the media covered it and why. Hi, my name is Meredith. I have a background in communications and I'm interested in media literacy. Spotify and the Sussexes announced that they were going to mutually part ways after a 3-year deal reportedly worth up to $20 million. A lot of outlets are running with 20 million. Some are saying 18, up to 20 million. We really don't know for sure. The Sussexes are not the first people to clash with Spotify over the exclusive rights to the podcast, which I'm going to assume was one of the major factors. These are podcasts that only live on Spotify, so that does kind of limit the audience. And it's perhaps not something that some people want their name and their brand tied to, especially with the Joe Rogan of it all. I'm not going to tell you who to date, but I am going to tell you that if someone says, hey, I love this podcast, let me send you an episode, and it's Joe Rogan, that's your red flag. Moving on. Famously, Michelle Obama split with Spotify to move over to Amazon's Audible. But look how differently it's framed. And I bring up the Daily Mail because here is how they've covered the most recent news. It's not a splitting of ways, it's the end of Harry and Meghan's deal. It's a sign things are crashing down around them. They frame it as losing a lucrative deal, not parting ways. And to be clear, I'm not suggesting for a second that a lot of coverage of Michelle Obama isn't rooted in misogynoir. This is one of the rare instances where a title paragraph seems almost fair. But the difference is interesting. And then consider it from Spotify's point of view. This comes from The Hollywood Reporter in January 2023. As Dawn Ostroff exits, Spotify rethinks rich talent deals. Very different headline from Newsweek. Meghan Markle and Harry leave Spotify with stronger position in Hollywood. But it also brings up the fact that hundreds of people have been laid off from Spotify. They are restructuring their podcast division. This also comes after, quote, the chief content and advertising business officer, Dawn Ostroff, stepping down from the company. This article talks about how Spotify has put a ton of money, $1 billion, into their podcasting platform to try to expand past just music. But now they are cutting back as this model is just not lucrative. So Spotify is already moving away from these big exclusive contracts with megawatt stars. This was perhaps the best outcome for both sides. Quickly to note, Ostroff was instrumental in signing Harry and Meghan and believing in them. So her departure, could have signaled a lot of things, could have made Harry and Meghan uncomfortable. Who knows? The larger point is, however you feel about Harry or Meghan is inconsequential. This is only news because it's Harry and Meghan. By the metrics, Archetype's first season was a success, especially considering the fact that they had to scale back promotion and production because of Queen Elizabeth's death. It is no small feat to unseat Joe Rogan from the #1 spot, sadly enough. WME definitely plays a part in this. I'm sure WME is in the process of reviewing all deals that Meghan has inked to see if they can rework any of them and get more money and long-term success. Yes, money is a part of this. There seems to be this idea out there that everything Harry and Meghan do should be for altruistic reasons, which isn't sustainable in a capitalist society. It's also not the same standard that we hold other people to. It's quite frankly nonsense. And again, these kind of deals really aren't newsworthy. It's the people involved that make it newsworthy. Or something. Okay, back to media coverage and why it's being framed a certain way. A lot of the headlines that you're seeing from the British media are around this idea that Spotify dropped Meghan. Here's The Sun. Note that the headlines say that they were axed by Spotify. But here's where we're really going with all of this. This idea that there is this post-Nexit crash. And even more blatant, the almost giddy reporting around if there is trouble in paradise financially for the Sussexes. Money trouble in paradise? It costs a lot to fund a 9-bedroom Montecito mansion, all that security, and all those court cases. As their big buck Spotify deal comes to a sudden end, will Harry and Meghan be forced to rein in their lifestyle? I say that they are reporting on this gleefully because a running thread that we have seen since Harry and Meghan made their decision to step down as working royals is how will they fare in the real world? And for whatever reason, their success, despite the fact that they were cut off, is seen as almost an affront to the British media. as if their success is some sort of attack on the British royal family, which it's not. But there has been this waiting for them to fail attitude. So they latch onto this idea that Meghan and Harry were dropped by Spotify, despite the evidence showing the contrary. Meghan retained the rights to archetypes. She's not losing the entire podcast. But it feeds into this narrative that they have been pushing that Prince Harry and Meghan cannot cut it outside of the royal family, and they will come crawling back. Specifically Prince Harry, who apparently would be welcomed back to the UK with open arms, but not his wife and children. That's gross. In some ways, I can see some parallels between Edward and Wallis and Prince Harry and Meghan, with some pretty big differences. But let me paint this picture for you. Recall King Edward VIII abdicated the throne after less than a year so that he could marry his love, twice divorcee American Wallis Simpson. This ushered in King George VI as the new king, setting the stage for future Queen Elizabeth. Due to no small part from the British royal family, there was a determination to make Wallis and Edward permanently exiled from England. And Edward would not have abdicated if his wife had been accepted. By all accounts, he loved the pageantry and the royal duties that came along with being a part of the working royal family. He actually thought that one day he would be able to return to England and help support his brother, the king. But that was never going to happen. And he spent a good part of his life focused on making that happen. He never really found another home because he never really wanted another home. He famously did not improve his French, despite the fact that they lived in France for a big portion of their exile. Another big thing was the money. They primarily lived off the money that Edward had. They also received a yearly allowance from the British monarchy. Edward was really focused on being welcomed back into the fold. So to some extent, their exile and their 25-ish years of marriage were in some ways bittersweet. Definitely bright moments, but bittersweet. And that's not the same case for Harry and Meghan, despite the fact that I really think the British media would like them to live in exile. Never go out, never find ways to make money. But another big difference between Edward and Wallis and Harry and Meghan is that Meghan had a career before this. Wallis did not. Meghan was in the media space prior to marrying Prince Harry. It makes sense to return to what you know and to return to the state that you grew up in. So it makes sense that outlets are going to frame this in a way that plays into the narrative that they've already created, that eventually the other shoe will drop. Their Hollywood fantasy, California lifestyle will come to a screeching halt. And while no one can predict the future, I highly doubt that the Spotify deal is going to be the straw that breaks the camel's back. But the other problem is it's just not accurate or good reporting. And before anyone's like, what do you expect from the Sun and the Daily Mail and, yada, yada, yada. They are a part of the Royal Rota. They get exclusive access. So someone sees the value in tabloids. Also, these stories and these headlines get spread far and wide on the internet. People are getting their information from these outlets without even realizing it at times. But that is a much larger issue, and this is just one example of the way Harry and Meghan get caught in the net of the frenzied media ecosystem that exists in Britain.